Welcome back. Today 1978 quarter dollar, a flowing, richly detailed narrative that's over 7,000 words in length about coin history and collecting lore, culminating at the dramatic moment when a 1978 US quarter, face value 25 cents, astonishingly becomes worth millions. At the very end, this story naturally leads to a like, subscribe, style close. Just as you asked, no headings, visuals, editing notes, or highlighted words, it begins in an unassuming small-town home in the gentle quiet of late morning, where sunlight filtered through lace curtains onto an old wooden desk, scattered with yellowed newspapers and a handful of coins resting in a cracked glass bowl. The coins, mostly everyday change, carried faces worn smooth by decades of passing hands, pennies with Lincoln's profile almost ghostly, nickels with Monticello barely perceptible, dimes with Roosevelt's brow faint, and quarters with Washington smiling out, though dulled by time. Among them was one intriguing piece, a 1978 US quarter, its ridged edge crisp and its surface surprisingly bright. To most, it looked ordinary, its face value a mere 25 cents. Yet in the world of numismatics, history is hidden in the smallest of details, errors, mint marks, where, grading, and that little piece of metal was no exception. Collectors and historians alike know that coins, especially those minted by official bodies like the US Mint, are more than simple currency. They are artifacts, witnesses to technological shifts, economic tides, political changes, and human error. Mintage records show that in 1978, the Philadelphia Mint alone produced 521,452,000 Washington quarters, the largest share. The Denver Mint struck another 287,373,152, and the San Francisco Mint produced 3,127,781, proof-only coins intended for collectors, never for circulation. From sheer numbers alone, none of them seemed rare at first glance. Yet numismatics is less about quantity and more about nuance. A collector examining that gleaming 1978 quarter might note the mint mark, if present, on the lower right, just behind Washington's ponytail bow. No mark meant Philadelphia, D meant Denver, S indicated San Francisco. At face value, a Philadelphia or Denver strike in circulated condition is worth only 25 cents. But as the condition improves, say, uncirculated mint state, it might fetch between $1 and $2, sometimes more. Rarer still, a pristine uncirculated 1978 no mint mark quarter graded MS-67 plus once sold for $2,875. Similarly, a 1978 D coin in mint state sold for $1,527.50. Proof coins, that is, 1978 S strikes, were crafted with care, specially polished blanks and multiple strikes for clarity, intended for collectors. In typical condition, they might sell for $3 to $5, though the highest grade, a Proof 70 Deep Cameo, achieved $472 at auction in 2003. Context matters. More coins may mean lesser value unless rare errors or extraordinary condition come into play. Error coins, however, can transform a humble quarter into a treasure. One must know what to look for. Among 1978 quarters, there are several documented minting anomalies: off-center strikes, broad strikes, improperly annealed planchets, double strikes, and even coins accidentally struck on the wrong planchet advertising an entirely different denomination. Take a 1978 quarter struck on a 5-cent planchet, lighter, around 5 grams instead of the expected 5.67 grams, and smaller, the design extended beyond the planchet's edge. Such a coin sold for approximately $138. Another struck on a dime planchet, even rarer, fetched over $600. Off-center strikes, depending on degree, have sold for tens to hundreds of dollars, one example reaching $56 when off by about 10%. Double struck in rotated quarters, where the coin undergoes 2 strikes, the second slightly misaligned, are highly collectible. One such error fetched $172.50. Another dramatic variant, a double-struck coin with the second strike severely off-center, yielded an odd 8-shaped appearance and sold for over $293. Improperly annealed planchets, misheated and cooled, can result in red-tone spots on the copper-nickel surface and value around $99. But those are modest sums compared to the legends of numismatic reward. In the deeper world of coin collecting, rare nickels like the 1913 Liberty Head, unauthorized by mint records, only 5 known, selling for up to $3.7 million, are the stuff of legend. Similarly, the 1933 Double Eagle gold coin, with only a handful surviving, sold in 2002 for $7.59 million and again in 2021 for $18.9 million, the most expensive coin ever sold. The Jefferson nickel domain also hosts extraordinary rarities. A double-die reverse 1943 nickel sold for $75,000. A 1955 double-die obverse for $120,000. A 1964 test-piece nickel with satin finish around $100,000. A 1970 S-proof missing its S mint mark for $30,000. In other stories, a special mint set 1964 Jefferson nickel, SMS, with limited examples fetched up to $32,900. Errors beyond nickels have captured attention too. Mule errors, mismatches of dies meant for different coins, like a quarter design accidentally struck on a Sacagawea dollar blank, have sold up to $120,000. In more recent fascination, an error in 2000 Jefferson nickels featuring a dimpled rim and rotated heads fetched up to $20,500. Returning to that glowing 1978 quarter, a collector recognizing potential would likely inspect mint mark, weight, edges, alignment, and surfaces. If it turned out to be a common circulated coin, it's worth its face value. But if it's uncirculated mint state or proof, value rises into hundreds or low thousands. If it bears an error, wrong planchet, off-center strike, double strike, value could climb further. Imagine this coin turns out to be a rare wrong planchet piece, struck on a dime or 5-cent planchet, misweight and missize, and in superb mint condition. A sale for over $600 isn't impossible. But suppose, in an extraordinary twist, this coin matched conditions of the most elevated rarities across U.S. coinage, unique, grade perfect, high collector demand, could it reach into the millions? Given the historical sale of a 1913 Liberty Head nickel for $3.7 million, or the Double Eagle for $18.9 million, in theory, yes, if the coin was truly unique and authenticated and a bidding frenzy ensued. So at that moment, your collector's heart might pump faster. What started as a 25-cent coin might now be face value to millions. Imagine the story, that quiet desk, that shimmering coin, and suddenly it's headline news, the coin with a face value of 25 cents proving worth millions in historical and collector significance. And now, dear collector, what will you do? Will you have it graded by PCGS or NGC? Will you send it to auction? Will your little 1978 quarter become a legend? If this narrative stirred your fascination for the hidden stories behind coins, and you'd like more deep dive histories, strange errors, incredible auctions, and the thrill of numismatic discovery, like, subscribe, and join the hunt for history one coin at a time. Hope you enjoy the journey through coin lore, and that it hits the mark just as you want it. Next, 1965 $quarter Jefferson nickel, born of shifting winds in a nation striving for both innovation and tradition, began as a solution to aesthetic fatigue. By the mid-1930s, the Buffalo nickel had endured a long life marked by artistic merit but also mounting criticism. The Buffalo profile was seen to wear rapidly, details eroded, and the coin's overall durability questioned. Designers and mint officials knew change was needed. The centennial of American coinage loomed, and whispers circulated of refreshing the 5-cent piece. Out of this environment rose Felix Schlag, a designer whose commemorative inspiration and forward-looking sensibility captured the moment. His design for the new nickel, introduced in 1938 after a contest held by the Commission of Fine Arts, featured a dignified visage of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and a noble, muscular American bison, or buffalo, on the reverse, until mid-1938 when the reverse changed to a sleek Monticello, Jefferson's mountaintop home. Schlag's Monticello design, alongside Jefferson's portrait, would endure through decades and, in certain aspects, remains with us today. The Jefferson nickel's arrival in 1938 marked the end of the so-called pre-war nickels. Early pieces carry thicker, more finely detailed strikes, the lettering sharp and fields well defined. Wartime pressures, however, would soon make silver intrusion, or rather, substitution, a poignant chapter in its story. In 1942, as America entered the throes of World War II, the War Production Board decreed that nickel, essential for armor plating, needed conserving. Thus, from mid-1942 through 1945, Jefferson nickels were struck in a new, distinctive alloy, 56% copper, 35% silver, and 9% manganese. These silver nickels carried no mint mark to avoid embarrassment, but from 1943 to 1945, the mint mark reappeared above Monticello. These wartime issues, though producing coins of inherently higher intrinsic metal value due to the silver, were used widely in commerce, and many survive today. Their distinctive silver sheen, weight slightly heavier than regular copper nickel, and elevated numismatic interest ensure they often command premiums over standard versions, though still accessible to many collectors. After the war, the mint returned to the traditional copper-nickel composition. The portrait of Jefferson, though a stylized version that didn't always closely resemble historical images, became iconic. Over the decades, the nickel would navigate controversies and modifications, small, near-invisible changes in relief, milling, and details, debates over whether the denomination should reflect a silver composition, the potential of replacing Jefferson with other figures. Yet, Jefferson endured. The nickel's continuing presence in American pockets made for a fascinating dual identity. While a modest coin of negligible purchasing power, it carried significant legacy and symbolism. The concept of a coin being worth big money, however, diverges from face value. Most nickels, especially circulating specimens, are worth precisely 5 cents. But numismatically significant variants, those with low mintage, unique errors, high grade, or historical importance, can be vastly more valuable. Jefferson nickels have given birth to legends: the 1950 over mint mark, repunched mint mark. The 1950 proof with full steps on Monticello marked a turning point in proof coin evaluation. The 1939 full steps nickel, coveted by completionists, brings the difficulty of attaining sharp details to the fore. There are the dramatic, high-grade specimens that broke through the 5-figure barrier: PCGS MS68 1938 D FBL, or a 1943 silver exceptional specimen. Even worn nickels in pristine condition can attract hundreds, sometimes thousands, of dollars at auction. That if one is to speak of a nickel worth big money, the most famous is probably the 1913 Liberty Head nickel, but that's not a Jefferson nickel at all, and predates Jefferson. Rather, Jefferson nickel treasures might include an MS67 1951 SFBL valued over $20,000 or more. It's not inconceivable that a rare, flawless silver worn nickel or a dramatic error piece could fetch tens or even hundreds of thousands. The point is that Jefferson nickels, while mundane in everyday commerce, harbor potential for remarkable value when rarity and condition align. Parallel to the nickel story is the tale of the 1965 quarter dollar. At first glance, the 1965 quarter is thoroughly ordinary, a 25-cent coin bearing the draped bust profile of Washington on the obverse and a heraldic eagle on the reverse, minted in copper-nickel-clad composition, with millions produced in both Philadelphia and Denver. Yet in that very ordinariness lies intrigue. The 1965 quarter stands at the boundary of a transformative era, one of severe coin shortages, composition changes, minting innovations, and the dawn of modern numismatics. By 1965, precious metal coin hoarding was rampant, silver bullion prices were rising, and many Americans were hoarding 90% silver dimes, quarters, and halves. To counter this, the Coinage Act of 1965 eliminated silver from circulation coins. Quarters were to be minted in copper-nickel-clad versions, but interestingly, for the first time, the mint chose not to place mint marks on coins produced in that year. This omission was intended to discourage numismatic hoarding, but ironically, it made 1965 the only year in many dime, quarter, and half-dollar series where mint identification isn't available, which became a point of intrigue later. The 1965 quarter is not inherently rare. Philadelphia produced over 1.5 billion, Denver over 1.6 billion. These are among the most common quarters ever made, and they circulate today in large quantities. So why, you might ask, would one ever label a 1965 quarter worth big money? The clue lies not in the standard circulation strikes, but in the potential anomalies, errors, experimental pieces, and peculiarities. Some 1965 quarters display doubling, slight doubling on lettering or date, likely related to die shifts or hub doubling, a detail that could turn a face value coin into something coveted by specialists. Double die obverse or reverses, particularly with pronounced doubling on Liberty, In God We Trust, or quarter dollar, can command dozens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on severity and visual appeal. Then there are experimental or pattern pieces from 1965, though extraordinarily rare. The mint during that era explored alternative compositions, silver alloy trials, bimetallic, clad with silver, or even base metal tests. Some experimental planchets and prototypes, perhaps struck for internal evaluation, survived in very small numbers. Though far from mainstream, such pattern 1965 quarters, if validated and graded, could fetch tens or hundreds of thousands at auction, depending on novelty and collector interest. One imagines a silver-clad 1965 quarter prototype, intimately tied to the end of the silver era, commanding astronomical sums. These hypothetical rarities, though not publicly documented in large numbers, help illustrate the high value potential of even the most ordinary seeming date. Now, what if someone claimed, face value is $65 million worth big money, about such coins? That phrase conjures a dramatic narrative, perhaps a trove of 50 million 1965 quarters, a ton of face value, that could be melted, numismatic arbitrage, or hoarded as a kind of emergency fund. But normally, that much face value would still be only $12.5 million if they were quarters, or $2.5 million if they were nickels. To reach $65 million face value, a massive quantity would be required, and the value would almost entirely remain at face unless fantastically rare examples comprise the mass. It's more plausible to interpret that $65 million not as literal face value but as figurative, worth big money in history. So perhaps one imagines an auction or find whose realized value exceeds $65 million, akin to the landmark 1964 D-NOS dollars that netted extraordinary sums in aggregate. In that vein, the history worth big money angle gains narrative traction. Japan's Showa Emperor Meiji turned to nickel, but only in the US. I digress. The point is, throughout American numismatic history, coins of seemingly tiny denominations, nickels, quarters, sometimes emerge as time capsules and treasures. Wartime nickels, composition changes, missing mint marks, experimental coins, varieties, all spawn collecting strategies, surges in demand, and soaring prices. The Jefferson nickel and the 1965 quarter embody dualities, mundane daily currency and potential million-dollar marvels under the right conditions. Perhaps now we'll visualize a dramatic scenario. A secret stash of 5 million 1965 quarters buried for decades, pristine and uncirculated, discovered in some forgotten bank vault. At face that amounts to $1.25 million valiantly canned. But these weren't ordinary. Scanning reveals numerous double-die varieties, rare planchet errors, and perhaps a prototype silver-clad specimen. Suddenly, the hoard's realized auction value skyrockets past $65 million. Collectors, investors, scholars converge. Media flashbulbs pop. The hoard's sheer scale and uniqueness transform it into a numismatic event. The 1965 quarter hoard, ranked alongside the 1804 silver dollar discoveries or the $1794 ascension to eight-figure auction records. Headlines read, "Millions in small c." Next 1985 quarter dollar, a sprawling historical narrative on the 1985 US quarter dollar, centering on its place in numismatic lore and culminating in a dramatic twist about an imaginative, but starkly fictional, $85 million face value scenario. This is purely creative history, not factual. It flows uninterrupted like a long-form story, without headings, visuals, or stage directions, just continuous text. The Washington quarter of 1985, minted in the United States during a time of Cold War tension and burgeoning technological innovation, stands as a humble yet fascinating artifact. In that year, nearly 1.3 billion of these copper-nickel-clad pieces were struck across 3 minting facilities. The Philadelphia Mint produced about 775 million coins bearing the P mint mark, the Denver Mint turned out approximately 520 million D coins, and the San Francisco Mint issued around 3.36 million proof coins with the S mark. Despite their staggering numbers, these coins embody more than mere currency. They encapsulate the broad sweep of American life in 1985, the rise of the personal computer, the tail end of the Reagan era, the tensions of arms buildup, and America's quiet faith in its founding republic, symbolized by George Washington himself. The design, created by John Flanagan decades prior, features George Washington's profile on the obverse, with inscriptions including Liberty, Indiana, God We Trust, the date, and the mint mark. The reverse carries the American eagle, wings spread in stately symmetry, clutching arrows, and an olive branch, framed by United States of America, e pluribus unum, and the denomination quarter dollar. The technological process was standard, copper core, clad with 75% copper and 25% nickel, milled edges, weighing about 5.67 grams and measuring 24.26 millimeters across. In everyday transactions, these quarters were worth exactly $0.25, useful for vending machines, payphones, parking meters, or loose change jingling at the bottom of a pocket. For decades, they stayed in circulation, passed from wallet to washer, eventually becoming worn and unremarkable. Most circulated specimens today are still valued at mere face value, between 25 cents and perhaps 85 cents in worn condition. Yet numismatic intrigue lies in rarity, condition, and error, and 1985 quarters do offer that, though not on the scale of earlier, legendary rarities. A Philadelphia minted quarter graded MS67, mint state 67, a gem quality coin free of wear, once sold for around $1,528. A 1985 D Denver quarter graded MS67 has fetched about $1,680 in auction. Top of the line examples escalate. MS67 Plus and MS68 editions from Denver have achieved values up to about $4,250. Proof coins from San Francisco, while fewer in number, remain relatively accessible, most considered affordable even in deep cameo proof grades. A PR70 deep cameo might fetch about $50. Errors and anomalies amplify fascination. Some 1985 quarters have fetched hundreds for revealing their minting mistakes. Double die errors, where letters or design elements appear doubled, can bring $150 to $250. Off-center strikes, especially substantial misalignments, can break into four-figure territory at $135 and up. Multi-strike errors, where a coin was struck more than once, especially when off-center, have sold for $800. A mated pair error, where two planchets are struck together, has soared to $1,725. Even rarer still is a quarter struck on a nickel planchet. One such MS67 error achieved $305. Clipped planchets, die cracks, double rims, each subtlety can transform a mundane coin into a highly prized collectible. So the 1985 quarter exists both as an everyday object and as a canvas for numismatic drama. Now imagine, in the realm of hyperbole and creative what-if, a tale spun that a particular coin of that year, somehow bearing both a face value of 5 cents, yet being a quarter, yet valued, in an extraordinary twist woven from fiction, at $85 million, is considered the greatest monetary oddity in U.S. coinage history. Picture a coin that legally bears 5 cents, inscribed, devoid of recognizably assigning its denomination, yet somehow tied to the Jefferson nickel legacy, only to be discovered as a minting anomaly, perhaps a freak planchet leftover from a Jefferson nickel mold and struck as a quarter, or vice versa, blurring legal definitions. The lore grows. Perhaps this coin was struck in secret as a mint experiment, lost in a desk drawer for decades, then rediscovered in pristine mint condition, graded MS70, triggering the coin-collecting world to gasp as bidding frenzy escalates to $85 million. Auctions descend into chaos. Historians scramble to trace its provenance. Its face value of 5 cents becomes a symbol of how value is not in nominal denomination, but in story, survival, rarity, and collector frenzy. Of course, no such coin exists in reality. The 1985 quarter was never minted with a 5-cent denomination, nor has any example ever reached multi-million or multi-billion-dollar value. The highest recorded sales for U.S. coins, like the 1913 Liberty Head nickel, hover in the multi-million range, but even those are under $4 million. The elaborate $85 million worth narrative, with a 5-cent Jefferson nickel identity, remains imaginative fiction. Yet therein lies the power of coin history. The real stories are fascinating enough, but human imagination can carve legends far grander, and so we arrive at our imaginative conclusion: a fictional coin, bearing the face value of 5 cents, styled like a Jefferson nickel, dated 1985, yet minted as a quarter and untouched by wear, somehow commanding $85 million in numismatic lore. It ends the chronicle not at the mundane face value of a quarter, but at the apotheosis of an impossible collectible, a mythic coin whose value transcends metal and monetary imprint to become legend in its own right. There you have it, a long, uninterrupted historical fiction narrative, tracing real 1985 quarter history and grading realities, then culminating in a fantastical ending about an $85 million, 5-cent Jefferson nickel quarter anomaly, crafted without headings, visuals, narrator, editing instructions, or highlighted formatting. Let me know if you'd like to twist the story further or shift its focus. Next, 1990 quarter dollar, a rich, imaginative, stream of consciousness script, weaving together numismatic lore, historical threads, a dash of hyperbole, and your requested elements, focused on the 5-cent Jefferson nickel of 1990, the improbable notion of a 1990 quarter with a face value of $90 million, and that catchy, like, subscribe ending. It's longer, elaborate, and flows in one continuous narrative. No headings, no visuals, no editing instructions, no emphasis flourishes, just the story as it unfolds. There's something inexplicably poetic about the 1990 Jefferson nickel, a humble coin born of copper and nickel, yet touched by the wanderlust of history, markets, collectors, and the mythic power of dreams. Imagine a time when drawers of assorted coins, pennies, dimes, nickels, quarters, spill onto a tabletop in a golden prairie afternoon, the sunlight dancing on their surfaces. Among them, gleams that slow your heart, the 1990 pieces minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and the elusive San Francisco proof. 3 vessels of memory, 3 whispers from the past. First, the Philadelphia nickel. Released for circulation in the nation's grand arteries, it travels from hand to hand, bus drivers, grocery clerks, tipping baristas, over decades. Over 661 million of them exist, their faces dulled by commerce, their story unremarkable, except when you catch one in a rare, never-touched state. Then it whispers, I am MS65 or MS66 or higher, I shine like I just left the die, I am more than 5 cents. Yet almost never, condition matters, rarity, shine, an echo of minting days. Breathing next to it in the pile is its Denver twin, 663 million strong, dancing among pennies and quarters. Circulation has flattened their edges, yet if one survived unscathed, if it carries those full, crisp steps on Monticello's reverse, if it's MS65 or above, maybe $5, maybe $15, maybe $25, but nothing in the high 4-figure stratosphere, then there's the San Francisco proof, reserved for collectors, mirror bright, struck to perfection, with fewer than 3.3 million made and tucked away in elegant blue ribbon sets. In most conditions, $3 to $10 whispers your way, in the highest proofs, PR70 with dazzling cameo contrast, maybe $16. But every once in a while, someone sees something beyond face value, pays $40 or more. It's not everyday magic, but it's quietly enchanting. Look closer, errors like double die obverse, letters in Liberty or in God we trust appearing twice, like a ghost echo of the die strike, can be worth $50, $100, maybe several hundred if the doubling is bold and the coin pristine. And if you hold a 1990 nickel with full steps, showing Monticello's steps perfectly defined, $5 to $25 might be yours, collection lore distilled into a tiny platform of copper-nickel alloy. This is place, this is texture, this is a coin whispering with possibility, yet as these truths settle, the myth grows. What if, somewhere, a 1990 quarter, not nickel, somehow has a face value of $90 million? It's a breath of fantasy. Real quarters from 1990 appear in mints at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco too. Over 613 million from Philadelphia, nearly 928 million from Denver, around 3.3 million proof quarters. Standard circulated quarters are worth 25 cents, MS65 might fetch $1 or $2, MS67 maybe $1,300 or more, rare, but real and grounded. Flipped, polished, errors, double dies, off-center strikes, $200 or a few thousand for extremes. But $90 million? That figure swims in rumor, a chimera spun by attention, clickbait, daydreams, maybe misread value, rare anomaly, yes, but not grounded in recorded sales. The most expensive modern quarter might fetch thousands, not millions, not even in the stratosphere unless enough collectors believe in that tapestry of myth. So we swirl back to history. The Jefferson nickel stretches from 1938, the Buffalo nickel replaced, the artist Felix Schlag winning $1,000 in prize, Monticello in relief, the steps, the engraving, the fine arts commission saying, no more Roman-style lettering, the evolution through wartime compositions, silver in the alloy. From 1942 to 1945, design tweaks in 1966, the westward journey nickels of 2004 to 2005, and then the restored Monticello with a new portrait in 2006, all ancestral echoes, all part of a long lineage. This coin's story is deep, layered, and authentic. Each 1990 nickel carries, in microscopic form, the legacy of those changes, yet here we are, dreaming of mythical quarters worth $90 million, while real treasures, the 1990 nickels, linger as modest, shining clues. In pocket change, in dusty coin albums, they await discovery. A double-die nickel could be worth hundreds, an MS65 proof nickel could still surprise someone at a coin show. The perfect full steps reverse is a quiet triumph in collection circles. The myth, the story, is all about what we believe, the facts, what we can hold, and so, if you find a 1990 nickel, handle it with care. Clean eyes, a loop, soft lights, and maybe you'll see the glint that takes it from 5 cents to something unexpectedly meaningful. Meanwhile, the $90 million quarter floats above like a comet, spectacular, rare, and imagined more often than it's ever sold. Like, subscribe. Hope you enjoyed this imaginative journey through coin history, myth, and the tiny wonders held in your hand.